Welcome back. This is video 4-3 part B, and in this video we are going to talk about graphing quadratic functions and its inverse. Now, it's important to note with quadratics, when we take the inverse of a quadratic, that's a square root, and a square root has restrictions on it because we don't want imaginary values. And I've talked about this before in the last lesson, where you cannot have negative radicands, right? That produces imaginary outputs, and we're not in make-believe land, okay? So we'll see that, and we'll talk about that here. This says the domain of a quadratic function, f of x equals x squared, is restricted in order to create an inverse that is a function. So we're going to restrict the initial input. So when we take the inverse, that's also a function, right? So if I have a parabola here, okay, notice if I do the horizontal line test, okay, which tests is the inverse actually a function, it fails because it intersects in two places. What we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this piece here, okay, so that our inverse is also a function, okay? So here is the first example, and this is actually, it's kind of already done for us, giving us the restrictions. So it's pretty simple in order to go ahead and graph these. All we're going to do, we're going to make a chart, and we're going to fill in the values. So it says graph the function f of x equals x squared for x is greater than or equal to 0. So again, what we'll do first, we'll plot our dashed line y equals x. Here it is, step 1. Okay, and then step 2, I want to plot this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make a chart. So here's x, here's f of x, which is just x squared. Okay, so the first x value that they give us, x must be greater than or equal to 0. That's your first value. So I plug in 0. Okay, and when I plug in 0, 0 squared is 0. All right, now I'm going to do the next x value, 1. What's 1 squared? 1. Next, I'm going to plug in 2. What's 2 squared? 4. Next, I'm going to plug in 3. What's 3 squared? 9. So now I have these points here, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 4, and then 3 9s off the graph. So my inverse, not my inverse, sorry, my function looks like this. Here's f of x. Now, because I already made my chart, notice for the inverse, this is going to be very simple. F inverse of x. All I'm going to do is switch these 0, 0, 1, 1, 4, 2, and 9, 3. So I have a point here, a point here. Hey, I already have those. Well, where do they live? Y equals x. Oh, they're supposed to be there. Okay, and then 4, 2. So we get this. Okay, kind of cool looking graph. All right, here's example 2. In example 2, our function's a little bit more complicated. Okay, so I'll start off graphing our dashed line, y equals x. I'm getting sloppy here. Come on, Schwarberg. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. Actually, I can't live with it. Okay, better. Oh, and I want to go back here too, something else I can't live with. I didn't label this f inverse of x. Okay. All right. So there's my dashed line. Now step 2, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a chart, x, and then g of x. Okay, so I'm going to plug in whatever value they tell me to plug in first. Okay, so here again it is x is greater than or equal to 0. So I plug in 0. 0 squared is 0 times 2, 0. Take away 2 is negative 2. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with 1. 1 squared, that's 1. Times 2, that's 2. Take away 2, that's 0. Next, I'm going to plug in 2. 2 squared, that's 4. Times 2, that's 8. Minus 2, 6. Okay, and I think that's about as far as we're going to get with values. So here's my first point. 1, 0, and 2, 6. Okay, so it's also important to note what's your very first point that you plugged in, 0, 2. Okay, 0, negative 2. So right here, here's our starting point. I'm going to graph this, and it looks like this. Okay, note I don't have an arrow down here. There's no arrow because that's your starting point. Okay, you don't want any function values going that direction. If you do, it's not going to be, your inverse is not going to be a function. So I have my 3 points now. Okay, now I want to go ahead and I want to plot g inverse of x. So I just switch my x's and my function values. So -2, 0, 0, 1, 6, 2. -2, 0, 0, 1, 6, 2. Okay, so there you have it, right? This is g inverse of x. This is g of x. And that's our inverse. Does it intersect on the line y equals x? Yes, it does. Okay, so here is, the third example. I want to show you this one, okay? And this is important because going back to these videos, if I had 2 functions and I said, okay, what's the solution? Where do they equal each other? Well, that would be where they intersect, and that happens to occur on this line y equals x. Something cool happens with this function. So again, I'm going to plot my line y equals x. Man, I wish this was already done for me. Okay, there's y equals x. Gotta make sure it's straight. Yes, it is. Okay. And then I'm going to plot my function. So here's x, d of x in a table. And what's my first value I'm going to plug in? Well, where do they tell us to start? They tell us to start x is greater than or equal to -2. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. -2. Now I plug it in. -2 plus 2 is 0. 0 squared is 0. Plug in -1. -1 plus 2, it's +1. Squared is 1. Okay, next, plug in 0. 0 plus 2, 2. Squared, 4. Okay, and then if I plug in the next value 1, it'll give me 3, and that's the output of 9. So that's not going to fit. So -2, 0. -2, not that one. -2, 0, which is here. Okay, -1, +1, and 0, 4, which is here. Okay, and our function looks something like this. Okay, hey, did you notice that it never intersects that line y equals x? I wonder what's going to happen. Okay, so and then here is x, d inverse of x, and we switch these 0, -2, 1, -1, 4, 0. So when I plot these, that's not right. 0, -2, 1, -1, and 4, 0. So I can do better than that. Oh, better than that. Okay. All right. So notice they don't intersect each other. Okay. So what would that mean? Well, it means there's no solution. Okay. So if we were asking where does the function and the inverse equal each other? Okay. So they don't intersect, and that is possible. All right. Okay, so here is a practice problem. Please go ahead, pause the video, and try this one. Note, where are you supposed to start? At 0. Okay, so make a little chart and start at 0. All right, hopefully you've graphed it. Here is the solution. Okay, and that's what you would get. And then the next practice problem is here. Okay, so please pause the video and try this one. Okay, and this would be your solution here. All right, so that is it for this video. In this video, we graphed quadratic functions. Well, we restricted the domain for part of the quadratic function, and then we graphed the inverse, and that was it. That's all we did. Okay, so go ahead, make sure you watch the next video. It is on graphing cubic functions, and then their inverse, which is cubic root functions. All right, catch you next time. Peace.